once you walk on stage and the music starts, you tend to forget about everything else. A lot of concentration on stage. You can't drift off thinking about things.
It's always a fun memory for fans of Led Zeppelin to remember the golden moments of the band, especially the impressive sounds that came from John Paul Jones, who was both the bassist and pianist. His talents endeared him to his audience, and it was definitely a sight to behold. But just like many other popular figures, what we all saw on stage was just a fraction of Jones's life. At 78, he has given us a deeper look at his time with Led Zeppelin and all the juicy details that we might have missed. He also shared tales about the dark periods they had, one of which resulted in the disbandment of Led Zeppelin. Sit tight as we unravel this story together. Born John Baldwin on January 3, 1946, in Sidcup, Kent, England, John Paul Jones was raised in a musically oriented family that greatly influenced his direction. His parents, Joe Baldwin, a pianist, and his mother, an actress and singer, played a very important part in nurturing his talents. Joe toured with big bands often, and when he did, he would take John along with him on the road, exposing him to all kinds of music at an early age. The early exposure invoked a deep love for music within him, and at 6, John was already learning piano. His parents first instilled in him a sound foundation in music and performance, together with a love of the many types of music. The young John continued to hone his craft, showing an early aptitude not only for the piano, but also for other instruments. By age 14, he was accomplished enough to act as a choir master for his church. Jones attended Christ College in Blackheath, where, with his developing interest in music, he studied mainly classical and orchestral music. Throughout his teen years, he worked ceaselessly at trying to be a better musician. Jones had an inquisitive mind about music, and he mastered the bass guitar and electric bass after trying many instruments. By the time he was 15, Jones joined his first band, the Deltas, a jazz rock band where he was mainly on bass guitar. They played in local clubs and attracted a small following, but it helped build Jones's experience in live performance. He left the Deltas and joined another group called the Shadows, although this is nothing like that famous group headed by Hank Marvin. Within these formative years, Jones also played with the Jet Blacks, wherein he continued to enhance his bass guitar playing. These experiences were extremely helpful in developing his style, a mixture of rock, jazz, and blues influences. At age 17, John changed his name to the stage name John Paul Jones, based on a novel about a naval commander of that same name. By this time, Jones was freelancing as a session musician in London. The London music scene during the 1960s was quite strong, and afforded him a great deal of opportunities to work with established artists. His first major gig as a session musician was with Jet Harris and Tony Meehan, formerly of the Shadows. In 1963, Jones reached #1 in the UK with the single Diamonds playing bass, which provided his biggest break and consolidated his reputation as an accomplished and dependable artist. His work as a session player soon took off, and he became one of the most popular bass players and arrangers in London. Among the many artists he worked with were Dusty Springfield, Lulu, and Shirley Bassey. He proved versatile and capable of blending into whatever style the producer required, further endearing him to them. During this period, he also worked on many television jingles and commercial music, which even broadened his musical range and technical abilities. Aside from bass, Jones further honed his work on the organ and mellotron, and both would later become integral parts of his sound with Led Zeppelin. During the early years of his career, he worked very prolifically as a session musician, largely with the producer and arranger Andrew Loog Oldham, who introduced him to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. Jones played bass on many Stones tracks and also provided string arrangements for their songs during this peculiar sound in the period of the mid-1960s. He continued to work as a session musician throughout the mid to late 1960s and built a reputation for his fastidious attention to detail and inventive arrangements. Jones finally created a group known as the Blues Breakers, with Peter Green playing guitar. While that group never gained popularity, it did give him the experience he needed in the blues genre that would be such a huge part of his work with Led Zeppelin. By this time, Jones was feeling the stress of non-stop session work and yearned for a project to which he could exercise more creativity and artistic license. The need to explore new musical territories compelled him to look for collaborations with other like-minded musicians who equally shared his desire for experimentation and innovation. It was one of his many sessions that Jones first hooked up with the guitarist Jimmy Page, likewise an in-demand session player. Jones and Page discovered they had a mutual respect for each other's playing and a desire to move beyond the constraints of session work. Though they did not, at the time, begin playing together, the seeds of their later collaboration had been planted in these early meetings. In 1966, Jones was recruited as bassist and organist for the Yardbirds on the resignation of the band's bassist, Paul Samwell Smith. The Yardbirds were at a transitional period at the time of Jones joining the band. During his time with the group, Jones did not stay long enough. Anyway, this contact with the band expanded his experience in psychedelia. In 1968, Jones and Page were reunited, each with the idea of a new band that could push the boundaries of rock. They combined with singer Robert Plant and drummer John Bonham, forming the eventual core of Led Zeppelin. Jones was already an accomplished multi-instrumentalist and arranger from his prior work. He played much more than bass. He played keyboards, the organ, and on occasion guitar, each being an ingredient that would develop the distinctive and unusual sound that came to be known as Led Zeppelin. The formative years of both John Paul Jones's life and his musical career were marked by an unceasing pursuit of knowledge, technical skill, and musicianship. Up until that point, he had a fairly distinctive voice that would help mold the sound of one of history's most influential rock bands. Since their formation in 1968, Led Zeppelin has rocketed to arguably being one of the most iconic rock ensembles in history. Born from Page's desire to continue on with the Yardbirds after their dissolution, Led Zeppelin would eventually come to feature Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham. Completing the band's lineup was Jones's background as an in-demand session musician, Plant's powerful vocals, Bonham's aggressive drumming, and Page's masterful guitar playing. Soon, Led Zeppelin would change the face of rock music, bearing a heavy, blues-inspired sound. Right from their inception, Led Zeppelin was a rock band that fused blues, folk, and psychedelic rock together under a heavy and raw manner of performance that would later be hailed as one of the first instances of the heavy metal genre. Indeed, their first album, entitled Led Zeppelin from 1969, took just about 36 hours to record but climbed to the top of the charts in the UK and the US fast. The record had such iconic songs as Good Times, Bad Times, and Dazed and Confused, which hinted at raw energy and musicianship. The album had some commercial success with generally indecisive reviews from critics and positioned the band as a serious player in the field of rock. After great success, the band did not waste time but started to work on another album. Led Zeppelin II was released later that year. This album dramatically developed the band's success, finally taking the top place in the US and UK rankings. This included the hit single Whole Lotta Love, a song that became a defining track for the band and one of the most recognized songs in rock history. Led Zeppelin II showcased the band's mastery of riff-driven rock and established them as pioneers of the genre. The band was to continue putting out records at this enthusiastic rate. With their third record, Led Zeppelin III, they became more acoustic and folk-sounding, showing their versatility and extending the musical scope. But it was Led Zeppelin IV that really sealed their position among the rock legends when it came out in 1971. It included such classics as Stairway to Heaven, Black Dog, and Rock and Roll, turning out to be one of the best-selling albums ever since its release. In particular, Stairway to Heaven became an anthem and sealed their legacy, contributing to the band's status as a cultural icon. However, despite his crucial presence in Led Zeppelin, John Paul Jones would always tend to be overshadowed by the charisma of Page and Plant. Moreover, as an accomplished multi-instrumentalist and seasoned arranger himself, he did all he could. He played bass and keyboards, and his talent and arrangement knowledge brought a special element to the band. Jones was softer and less flashy than Page and Plant, always seemingly in control of the action in the limelight. Page was thought of as the front of the band with his extended guitar solos and stage persona, and the vocals of Plant and his charisma in the public eye mesmerized many fans. In respect to this, Jones was not quite as well known to the audience or public, though his musicianship and versatility with the band were equal in value. As Led Zeppelin rose to unparalleled levels of success, the pressures of fame took an immense toll on band members, most noticeably the drummer John Bonham. Renowned for his explosive drumming, Bonham was considered to be one of the most influential drummers of his era. His highly charged performances were an integral part of the powerful sound of the band. His drumming in projects like Moby Dick and When the Levee Breaks attained legendary status. The lifestyle of rock stardom, however, was not one that agreed with Bonham. The constant touring, marathon sessions, and endless pressure eventually began to tell on him, and he started to drink as a means of coping. Soon, Bonham's drinking was affecting his life and relationships with his band members. Whereas the other members of Led Zeppelin also had reputations for being hard partygoers, Bonham's drinking became progressively more destructive as time went on. During rehearsals for their upcoming North American tour in the summer of 1980, Bonham drank heavily all day on September 24th evening after consuming a full day of alcohol. Estimates have placed the amount to 40 shots of vodka. He was found unresponsive the next morning, September 25th, by Jones, the band's keyboardist. Sadly, the levels of alcohol consumed by Bonham caused him asphyxiation from his own vomit. The loss of Bonham was devastating to the band. Fondly called Bonzo, he was much more than a part of Led Zeppelin's sound. He was an integral part of the group and a very close friend to all its members. In the wake of his death, the surviving members faced an agonizing decision about the band's future. Ultimately, they decided that Led Zeppelin could not continue without Bonham. He had an incomparable drumming style and personality that could never be replaced, and for them, to continue without him would undermine the integrity of the band. On December 4, 1980, Led Zeppelin announced they were breaking up. They issued a press release to the public where they explained that they could not continue on as they had, out of respect for Bonham and the music they had made together. Thus came the end of one of history's most influential bands within the rock genre, one which helped shape the sound of the genre and inspire so many musicians and fans across the world. Though the band was somewhat short-lived, the influence of Led Zeppelin has lasted long in musical circles. Innovating rock by mixing up blues, folk, and heavy metal, they showed the path to the future generations of rock performers. Each member of the band left a dent in the music world, which is very hard to fill, and people keep celebrating their legacy nowadays. Bonham's tragic death was a grim reminder of the personal cost of fame and success and heralded the end of an era as far as rock music was concerned. In the years since their breakup, Led Zeppelin has remained an icon of rock perfection, with each of its members acknowledged for his contribution to the band and to music in general. Although Jones wasn't brought to the forefront as much during the years when they were active, he has been celebrated and recognized for his role in crafting their sound during the years that followed the breakup. Bonham's influence as a drummer has been celebrated. Many modern drummers cite him as the major influence on their playing. The story of Led Zeppelin is one of success and innovation, but ultimately of tragedy. Their music, on the other hand, lives on to keep touching and entertaining audiences around the world. With the breakup of Led Zeppelin in 1980, John Paul Jones pursued a very successful solo career, diverse in nature, and really displayed the multi-talented musician he was. Initially following the breakup, Jones remained very much behind the scenes by concentrating on writing, producing, and arranging music for other artists. Having worked with an impressive array of musicians, from Paul McCartney and Rem to Hart, he showed that he could fit into virtually anything. At the same time, Jones himself tried a variety of other styles, including ambient music, film scores, and experimental compositions. Early in the 1990s, Jones finally began to release solo work, taking on the role of a frontman. In 1999, he released an album titled Zuma, which was his first ever solo album and showcased his prowess in the bass guitar, among other instruments. The album received great reviews from critics on account of its complexity, and also because of Jones's innovative use of many instruments, which included the pedal steel guitar and mandolin. In 2001, he released his second solo album, The Thunder Thief, which further showcased his eclectic musical tastes and again demonstrated his talent for blending rock with folk and jazz. While Jones remained largely reserved and inconspicuous, he never lost his connection to the Led Zeppelin legacy. He had also participated in a few Led Zeppelin reunions briefly in 1985, 1988, and 1995, when the surviving members appeared for events like Live Aid, Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary, and their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Things had gotten just a little strained between him and the band, though, when in 2007, Page and Plant reunited for the Ahmet Ertegun tribute concert at London's O2 Arena. This show, long speculated as being the reunion of Led Zeppelin, did not originally include Jones in its early plans, and reportedly did not even let him know until much later. The fact that Jones was left out of the early-stage plans of the reunion really caused uneasiness among some of the band members. The fans were really the most upset because he had been such a great part of the sound and the success of Led Zeppelin. He finally joined the concert performance, and the show went on to garner critical acclaim, with Jones displaying his unique skills on bass, keyboards, and mandolin. Notwithstanding the success of the concert, the whole argument of Jones's exclusion initially caused a wedge between him and his former bandmates. As Jones stated, he was disappointed for not being included from the very beginning. Jones was also a committed family person who attempted to put family before the tour performance rigors and other pressures of the music industry. Jones married Maureen in 1967. They have 3 daughters, Jacinda, Tamara, and Kira. Jones is one of the musicians who possess strong family values and are known to be good husbands and fathers. He has stated in numerous interviews that his family has been the best support system in his career. Unlike many of his contemporaries in the rock star fraternity, Jones did not get caught in the usual controversies of the trade. Jones remained somewhat private and humble, often crediting his family for support and his wife for understanding such a demanding career. Later on, Jones mentioned in interviews that it was indeed the family that urged him a great deal to be a solo artist. This solo career freed him to give equal weight to both his music and family, allowing him more time to spend with his loved ones. Even on tour or when working on different projects, Jones has always tried to make as much time to be with his loved ones, keeping his family life stable. Through the ups and downs of his career, Jones has remained on a remarkably steady course, both personally and professionally. The years since Led Zeppelin have been filled with an almost constant series of new musical explorations, collaborations, and deep devotion to his craft. The different projects he has been involved with range from forming the band Them Crooked Vultures with Dave Grohl and Josh Homme, who received much acclaim for their unique blend of rock influences. Overall, John Paul Jones's trajectory away from Led Zeppelin has been one of discovery, intertwined with devotion to family and music. It is this ability to adapt, to reinvent himself without ever losing his identity, which has allowed him to build a respectable solo career. Though he may never be as famous as some of his ex-bandmates, Jones's diverse contributions to rock music and devotion to his family are enough to seal his position as arguably one of the most multi-talented and talented musicians of his era. There you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video and be sure to come back for more engaging stories.